Good morning, everyone. We're almost ready to start. Okay, believe it or not, it is 11:30. So, hi everyone who's on, and for those who are still logging on, I'm Margie Cosmerl and Liz David here. We are Blue Heron Financial Group. We want to send a shout out to Northrop Grumman Federal Credit Union and thank them for the opportunity to provide education to you. Today's presentation is about Social Security. So there's a lot to unwrap within this next 45 minutes. We'll do our best to get through it and also throw out the disclaimer. We are not the Social Security Administration. We are financial planners, but Social Security is a big part of your future retirement income. So did I miss anything there, Liz?
Nope, I think we're good. We'll roll right in. Thank you all for joining us.
Okay, so here's what we're going to tackle today. First of all, like when are you eligible for Social Security? And we're going to go kind of deep on that. Just because you are doesn't mean necessarily that's the right time, and that will lead into the how much will you get. What provides that benefit? What's the calculation based on? And that's the work and taxation part. Spousal benefits, there's been a lot of changes on that front over the last, 5-10 years time frame. Things that were able to be done years ago are no longer, but there's still some things that you should know. And then just other considerations in general. But let's start with some history, a little history lesson here. Okay, so let's go way back to think your parents' generation, maybe your grandparents' generation, depending on the age of attendees. So it was started back in 1935, as you see here, and FRA, we're going to talk about FRA, you will see FRA, gotta love the little acronyms, but that stands for full retirement age. So just remember that. So when that started back in 1935, the full retirement age was 65, but let's keep in the back of our minds what life expectancy was during that time period, because it was not much longer than age 65. Then in 1940, that whole monthly payment system started. Then let's get into 1965. Believe it or not, Medicare, really, 1965? All right, I'll put it out there. That's within my lifetime. So that's when that was signed into law. That too, similar to the Social Security, is there to provide benefits, originally thought to help the poor, but certainly a big part of our healthcare system. And we'll talk a little bit about some overlap there with Medicare and Social Security. Then in 2009, I guess the powers to be, the actuarials, took a look and said, hey, life expectancy is increasing. So let's bump that out a whopping year to age 66. But then there was a gradual increase to age 67. Not a lot, in my humble opinion, of years in consideration with how much life expectancy has expanded. So here's what needs to be in place in order to collect Social Security. You have to be at least age 62, 40 credits. So just think in terms of 4 credits per year. Now, if that's chopped up and there's some spotty employment history, so be it, but 40 credits through payroll taxes. So the lawn mowing, babysitting jobs of your teenage years don't count towards Social Security. Now, if you have a stay-at-home partner or spouse who has not worked, they could still be eligible to collect Social Security benefits. Again, we're going to get into some details on this, and certainly even to this day, there's some surprise factors on the spousal collection and even the ex-spouses. I'll just put it out there. The ex-spouse does not need to know if you're collecting on their Social Security. It's okay. You don't have to call. You don't have to let them know. And then this last one is really important because the benefits are calculated based on 35 years of earnings. So again, let's think back to those early jobs, maybe in your mid-teens, personally speaking, working at a pizza shop. Those years start dropping off. Those contributions and the calculations are minimal going into it. But as our careers and work history progresses into the future, then that's attributing to a higher Social Security amount. All right, moving along here. On your screen, I call it the green statement. And I can't tell you how many times Liz and I will be in a meeting and we will talk about Social Security benefits, and we will have the comment, oh yeah, I just got a statement. Well, maybe you think you just got a statement, but you might not have just gotten a statement. So the statements that we recall, we did get every year for a number of years, 3 months prior to our birthday. Good information in there. They get stashed away in a file in the desk. Well, then came a period where they didn't even send them out at all. And then fast forward, now if you're Social Security eligible, now you're getting the statements again. But in the center of the screen you're looking at, we will direct you to go onto the Social Security website. There you can pull up the same statement that you're looking at and also to run some other estimates. So we definitely recommend, if you haven't already, to go ahead and create your My Social Security so that you can periodically check. And it is important to take a look and make sure that they have some critical pieces of information correct. I can think of 2 situations where they had a birth year off, and that can really throw a monkey wrench into benefits and when to collect them, as you can imagine. So you want to take a look at it. You also want to take a look at your work history. And then for our purposes in the whole retirement planning, we want to know what those benefits look like so we can run some estimates, as you'll see right there, smack in the middle of the page, running those based on different ages. Now, if you have decided that you're going to stop working, then we would not want to include a work earnings going forward. So there are some little caveats to how to run these reports. And by the way, that is ssa.gov. So one more time, ssa.gov is the website to go to log on to the My Social Security benefits page. So I've mentioned probably twice already that Social Security comes into play as we think about retirement. It is a critical piece of the puzzle, but it is not, hopefully, that and that alone that you are surviving on. Here, there's this description of Social Security representing 40% of your income. That is an average. So for many who are perhaps on this call today, another big piece of the overall retirement income maybe is your pension. So if you've been with the company long enough, and depending on which part of Northrop that you fall under and what that pension may look like. I think there's 50, 60 different pension plans under the Northrop Grumman umbrella. Some are a bit more generous, shall we say, and newer employees, it's just not even part of the equation. The other, as we look on the right-hand side of the screen, my right hand, I think your right hand as well, the 401k has really taken over as the largest part of the overall bucket for many. So we're not going to spend too much time on the 401k plan because that could be its own topic. Employee stock, if you have perhaps awards over a period of time, that may also be part of the overall. As we move through here, HSA, FSA, these are part of your benefit program. If you can contribute, we highly recommend contributions going into those. And then what you're doing outside your employee benefits. IRAs, maybe from rollovers from prior employers, IRAs that were started way back when you had some deductibility, and then continuing through these different areas of savings. You may have mutual funds, annuities may have their place in your overall. And then as we move through here, again, Social Security being that bottom tier. So all of these collectively come into play when you're looking at retirement. And what we do at Blue Heron is say, just hold on before you're deploying from any one of these different buckets. Is let's strategize, let's look at the big picture, let's look at tax law changes that have occurred, let's determine what amount you truly need to come in the door, and then make some educated decisions.
Yep, great point. And again, so really retirement income planning really comes down to your expenses, and we could go on a whole hour conversation about this, but to Margie's point, it's really just figuring out what do you need to be comfortable in retirement. And again, to Margie's point, you know, out of which of these sources is it best to take and when? And the when is a big factor. From a market standpoint, from an age standpoint, from a tax standpoint. So it's really important, to Margie's point, not to just pull the Social Security trigger because it looks like quick, easy money, for lack of better words. One thing we'll touch on real quick too, without going too far on tangent, hopefully, is HSA and FSA. So HSA is a health savings account. FSA is a flexible spending account. Just keep in mind that FSA is use it or lose it. I think you can carry over a small portion. And Margie gets credit for the health savings account. Really, we encourage folks to save into there, max it out if you're eligible, and not use it if cash flow allows. So if you have the financial wherewithal to pay your healthcare bills out of cash flow and let that HSA grow, that's really the only place that you're going to get triple tax-free money. And you will always, always, always have health costs.
So what Liz means on that triple tax-free, so I'm borrowing her term because it fits. So you're putting the money in pre-tax, okay? That's tax-free going in, and then the money comes out both federally and state tax-free. And it could be growing tax-free, and you have investment options. So yeah, I think that's an often overlooked resource. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I just kind of sandbag on mine, holding off, because I know what those big bills can look like later on in life. I think, what is it, average for a 65-year-old couple in their lifetime, $250,000 outside of health.
$280 now, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I had one more thing to add, but I forget what it is, so we'll come back to it. Let's just dive back in again to Social Security. These are really important numbers to remember and kind of get yourself acquainted with what is your full retirement age. You saw on that one timeline that Margie was going through in 2009, it was pushed to 66. And then in 2021, it's kind of been this wave of phasing people into getting everybody at full retirement age of 67. So it's really important that you know what your full retirement age is, because that is such an important trigger on a lot of things. And we're going to walk through that in a lot of detail. But again, pretty much your full retirement age is only 66 if you're already 66. So just keep that in mind. And if not, you're likely somewhere in between or at 67. So you want to make sure that you understand exactly where you fall in there. You can see they just kind of incrementally pushed it out to get all the way to that 67. This I love, and I don't think Margie and I can emphasize enough. So you can claim Social Security at 62, and anybody can. And again, I think oftentimes that is, it just feels like the right thing to do if there hasn't been really diligent, comprehensive planning. People say, well, I'm 62, here's this monthly guaranteed paycheck. I'm going to take it because I can. But to keep in mind that reduction and the younger you are, the more impact it will have on your benefit if you take it earlier. Because again, if your full retirement age is 67, you're taking a 30% haircut for the rest of your life on that paycheck. Really interesting. In 2011, so 10 years ago, and thankfully there's been a lot more conversation around Social Security, we hope. 10 years ago, 74% of Americans collected and took some sort of reduction. So we're hopeful, and our goal, if you take nothing away from today, except for the fact that you should really be mindful of, just because you can get it at 62 doesn't mean that you should. That's a good message to take away. It really is important to do the comprehensive planning. I'm going to digress and go backwards because I remembered what I was going to say. I've had a lot of questions lately. Marge and I get, questions all over the board, but back to the HSA. And we do full-blown Medicare seminars. But the HSA, if you are 65, so we're talking today about Social Security, you've seen those ages have been pushed from 65 to 66 to 67. Medicare for now is still at 65. If you are still an active employee at Northrop Grumman, you are not required to sign up for Medicare. And then taking it one step further, if you're contributing to the HSA, you do not want to register for Medicare, because if you cannot be on Medicare Part A and contribute to the health savings account. So that was going to be my point on that. You want to make sure that if you're contributing to an HSA, you want to hold off on signing up for Medicare. Northrop Grumman will give you a letter that basically proves you have qualified coverage. You won't be penalized. Sorry, that's my side note for the day. So again, if you take Social Security at 62, you're going to get your smallest monthly check. Employment is a huge one. Marge and I cringe. Again, retirement, we say, is the biggest transition besides having kids or getting married. And so if you're jumping in at what we'll call an early retirement of 62, what happens if you find yourself at 63 and saying, okay, my honey-do list is done, my garage is organized, our closets are cleaned out, and now I'm bored. And maybe I want to go back and be a contractor. Or maybe Northrop Grumman is calling and saying, hey, will you come back part-time? You will be severely impacted if you go back and you work and you're collecting Social Security. And we're going to talk about those numbers.
And we have seen it. And we've seen it. And much to our chagrin, somebody decided to go for that low-hanging fruit, jump on it. They were not planning to go back to work. And do you want to finish that story, Liz?
Well, and then they went back to work and they earned too much money, and then they got a big old fat bill from Uncle Sam. They had to pay it back.
Yeah, I think it was like $14,000 or something.
It was 28. It was a lot.
It was a big number.
Yeah, and again, we'll talk about some numbers, but again, just several examples of why it's important not to just jump on it at 62. Another thing to think about is when you do this comprehensive planning and you know what your expenses are and what your income needs are, and let's just say that you are legacy Westinghouse and you have a nice pension and you've been saving into your 401k plan. If we look at expenses and then we look at income, and let's say your spouse is still working or whatever the case might be, if it really looks like you only need $1,000 a month, why lock yourself into what could be a 30% reduction and get $2,000 a month when you could really see that grow and you could tap into your nest egg to just cover what you truly need? We all tend to spend what we have. So again, if you don't need the full 2,000, then you could let Social Security grow, which is growing by 7% per year between 62 and 67, and then 8% from 67 to 70. You're not getting those guaranteed returns anywhere else.
Yeah.
No matter what you.
No, we assure you, there's nowhere that's going to say you're going to get a 7% increase on your income. Nowhere.
So again, it really comes back to that planning. Claiming at age 70, this is the max. So, what we want to make sure people know is that you don't want to hold off. They did change what's called required minimum distribution, which is on right now just on pre-tax IRA money or 401k money at 72. If you're not working, you are forced to take income. There's a whole lot of Uncle Sam IRS birthdays that you have to remember. We just like to remind you that Social Security, the latest you'd want to wait is age 70. The impact of waiting is you get your highest monthly check. The other big benefit is you're not penalized at all if you want to work. So you get a larger check. You can make as much money as you want without worrying about Uncle Sam taking some of it back. And again, you get that 8% increase from your full retirement age until age 70. Something else at margin I like to emphasize too, you can see here, this is over 130% of, or over 30% higher than your full retirement age. But just keep in mind with Social Security, for every single month you wait, you get a fraction of that raise. So it's not like my birthday is August 3rd. I have to wait until August 3rd of next year to get that 7 or 8% raise. Each month it's incrementally going up. So to give yourself that adjustment time, we call it, and it is a big adjustment. As you move into retirement, really figure out what expenses look like, really figure out what your income needs are, instead of just grabbing as quickly as you can. Social Security is like your pension. It's a pretty much a lifetime decision, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too. But again, it's a huge decision with a lifetime impact on you and your spouse. That really is something that you want to make prudently.
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate, from full retirement age to age 70, 8% increase per year. I think it comes out to be 2/3 of 1% on a monthly basis. Prior to your full retirement age, it's increasing 7% per year. So we just urge all to just slow down, stay open-minded. There's many times I get into what I refer to as the arm wrestle with our clients and just say, hold on, let's just push it out. Just will you give us an extra year here before we're making some decision? And it typically works out quite well.
Yep. So when should you take it? And again, this is where the planning is really important. Just, you can kind of see here, at 62, you're going to take at least, you're only going to get 70% at most of that full retirement age amount. And you could have impacts at any of these points on income if you decide to go back to work. And then you can see the longer you wait, number one, the more money you get and the more flexibility you have too. I really love this chart. So I'm just going to put all the numbers up here. So this is what Marge and I have been talking about under full retirement age. The most you can earn is, let's just call it $19,000 of earned income. And once you go over that, for every $2 over, Uncle Sam is going to ask back $1 for every $2 over for benefits. The year you turn full retirement age, you have a little bit more flexibility. You can only earn up to $50,500, but and in that year it's $3 for every $3 over. They pull back $1, and again, this is where you could be collecting. And if let's say at 62 you had no earned income, at 63 you decide to go back, they're not going to catch that until you file your taxes. So that's why it's not like it's withheld at the onset. You could get a big bill that you owe a big chunk of money. And so we just really want people to be cognizant of, once you're full retirement age, you can rest easy knowing that you're not going to have any penalties or owe back money once you hit that actual full retirement age. And again, that's why it's important for you to know what your full retirement age is. Once you're there, you can work and collect Social Security, no problem, no issues, nothing to worry about. This is another really big piece that we often see, and we work with a lot of engineers, as you can imagine, and they will have everything spreadsheeted, which we love. We think it's tremendously helpful for to understand, what are your expenses and what do you think is coming in the door. Oftentimes the taxability on Social Security is missed. And again, this is why we do what we do every day. But think about your lifestyle and again, your expenses. And oftentimes for years, decades, really, we've all been told our tax bracket's going to be lower in retirement, which is not always true. Not to mention that we are likely heading into some rising tax rates. And so where that comes into is if you're single, if your income is under 25,000, and that when they say provisional income, that's anything that's taxable plus tax exempt income plus half of your Social Security. So let's just think about pension alone, or the bulk of you who have been saving into this Northrop Grumman savings plan, which up until 2009 timeframe was only pre-tax dollars. You didn't have Roth before then, maybe some after tax. Every single dollar that comes in, pension, pre-tax distributions from 401k or IRA, that feeds into that. So not often, almost never, are Margie and I sitting down with a single person or a couple who says, I can live on less than $44,000 a year. And again, keep in mind that's pre-tax money. So we are having to come up with that money from somewhere. 9 times out of 10, it's a taxable source, which means up to 85% of your Social Security is taxable too. So just keep in mind, a dollar from Social Security is not necessarily a dollar because you are going to have to pay Uncle Sam. So it's really important just to factor in the idea that Social Security could be taxable in retirement and likely will be in this environment. Anything to add there, Margie?
Well, just thinking about it on the reverse, I guess if it's any consolation, that 15% of your Social Security benefits will be tax-free. I don't know. It's not that much of a consolation, but maybe it's a little something.
Yeah. So benefit options, spousal benefit is really important. And again, this is where full retirement age is important because what you choose to do will impact your spouse. The spousal benefit basically says spouse can collect the higher spousal benefit up to 50% of the spouse's full retirement age benefit. With that being said, number one, this is a bigger change Margie touched on. There's been a ton of changes in the past several years. This is one of them. You used to be able to do what was called file and suspend. I think we talk about it in a second. Unless you've already done it, it's not likely an option for you. You have to be born before January 2nd, 1954. And really everybody who had the flexibility to do it has already done it. But if you take your spousal benefit, if you take your benefit early and your spouse 50% is dependent on your amount, that amount will be reduced too. So that's important to keep in mind. To receive a spousal benefit now, your spouse has to be collecting a benefit. So if my husband's Social Security amount, 50% of mine is higher than his whole, he can't claim his 50% of mine until I'm claiming my Social Security.
Yeah, and I just want to go back, Liz, because we did run into this before where the husband in this case, again, we get it, low hanging fruit. We also fully understand there's a crossover point in there, but he wanted to jump on Social Security at age 62. He did. He actually filed for it. Came in, they had a meeting. His work earnings far exceeded her work earnings. And we explained to them, if you take this now, maybe you could control your income because he was self-employed to keep it below the threshold now at almost 19,000. But please understand that you're not only giving yourself a 25-30% discount, but you're also penalizing your spouse. If something happens to you, she moves up to your benefit amount, and you've just now taken this big discount. So it really, really, really is important to not only look at how triggering Social Security benefits affect the income now, but if one passes away.
Yep. Really good point. Divorce spousal benefit, Margie touched on this earlier. This is such a common question. Does my spouse need to know? They don't. How you qualify for divorce spousal benefits is you have to have been married for at least 10 years, not currently remarried. You have to be 62 or older, collect, and be at least 2 years post-divorce if that person has not filed yet. So again, that you have to be the 2 years beyond. And that, again, the divorce portion is just 50%. So if your 100% is higher than the 50, it may not be attractive at that juncture, but it could be. Survivor and divorce. Survivor, a widow, spouse, or divorced widower or widow can collect survivor benefit up to 100% of deceased spouse or ex-spouse benefits. You have to be 60 or older to collect. We're grateful that the widow, the survivor benefit has really been given the most flexibility, in our opinion, as it should be. This is the one choice that you can make that is not permanent. So you could say, I'm going to take my survivor benefit and let my own Social Security continue to grow until age 70. So maybe they're pretty close, maybe 100% of it, maybe you were both working spouses and they're relatively close. You can take that spousal survivor benefit as early as 60. You're still going to take a haircut and you're still subject to the earnings. So that's really important to keep in mind. That's just because you're a survivor, they're not giving you any flexibility on earnings limits or anything like that. So you have to wait until full retirement age if you are still working or thinking about working, but you do kind of have a choice on which one you claim, and then you can flip over to the other one down the line, versus pretty much every other decision now has been limited to a one-time decision. You can't say, I'm going to claim my spouse's and I'm going to flip to my own down the line like you used to be able to do. Again, unless you've already done it. This is just a real life example, just highlighting that spousal benefit. So here you can see Sam and Ann are married. Ann's Social Security is clearly higher than Sam's. If they claim at 62, you can see what that benefit would be. And just keep in mind, you can see here, I think this is a really good example. If they both claim at 62, not only is Sam going to get a reduction because Ann claimed early, but then he's also getting a reduction because he's only 62 as well. So it's kind of like a double reduction on there. Spousal benefit, you can see here, this outweighs it at full retirement age for both of them. The spousal benefit, what they call top up, is $200 because it's $200 more than what his was. If they both agreed they were going to wait until age 70, I think it's important to reiterate that this amount does not increase. That 50% survivor, 50% spousal, sticks at 50% of full retirement age, regardless of what your spouse does. What it does do, though, is the Ann's Social Security will forever be the surviving Social Security. So it allows, and Margie touched on this earlier, this 3168 is going to be what carries on no matter who's alive. And so if she had taken it at 62, that's almost half, so call it 60%, but that's a big difference of surviving income. And that's where we'll pick on the guys for a second. Oftentimes men are going to say, well, I'm going to break even at 82. I'm going to die before then. And none of us know we're going to go meet our maker, but we have to keep life expectancy for both of you, both partners, in mind when planning, because this is a huge amount. I mean, 3168 versus 1800. And again, it's lifetime income.
Yeah. So our response to that spouse, man or woman, is okay, but it's not all about you. And working through these equations. Yep.
Restricted application. And again, Marge and I don't even like talking about this too much anymore because it becomes confusing. And it really, again, if you were born before January 2nd, 1954, and you haven't done anything with your Social Security, feel free to email us. Other than that, I don't think we get into it because it's very confusing because it's not available anymore. The do-over. We don't like talking about this one either because there is so much on the chopping block right now in DC. And this is one that we have heard too. They say, well, I'm going to take this money at 62 because I can, and I don't know how long Social Security is going to be around, and I'm going to save it or I'm going to invest it. And then I'm going to pay it back and then you get that raise. So what this is saying is, if you claimed at 62 or 63 or 64, whatever that start date was, you could essentially start and then within 12 months say, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. I don't want to do that. and I want to kind of have a do-over, as this is showing, but you have to pay all that money back. But let's say that's your strategy and you want to do that, and then Washington, D.C. decides, you know what, the do-over is not an option anymore. And so now you've locked yourself into a reduced benefit, potentially owe taxes, potentially owe the penalty. We just think it's, pardon my French, but it's just a terrible strategy in our opinion. Suspending benefit. So this is where you can suspend your own benefit at full retirement age, but it also impacts anybody who's collecting on you. So again, with all of the new rules, for anybody to be collecting on your benefit, you also have to be collecting. If you do suspend, then you get that 8% credit per year, which is great. All right, so future of Social Security. Margie says we could solve it on the back of a napkin.
You really could. I mean, you just have to push that age out a little bit further and maybe stop capping income. You know, that it has been a political hot potato for decades and decades and decades. And I just happen to periodically recall that right around the time when I personally could start collecting is about when that pot starts drying up. However, I'm going to put the trust out there, you may dispute this, that the powers to be will come up with something to resolve this issue.
Yeah.
Again, sounds like a stretch right now a little bit, but okay.
So 2034 is when the Board of Trustees is saying, okay, this has potential to be depleted. I have been reading more articles on the millennials and how many are getting into the workforce and all of that stuff. So again, to Margie's point, our hope is that they can make some of those small changes, you know, stop capping income at 134,000. If somebody makes 800 grand, let them pay into it the whole time. Change of cost of living adjustment. We haven't seen this for years. And then this year there's talk of a pretty big bump coming. So
I think I've heard or read 5% unless anything changes, but it was supposed to be set, I believe, this month of October, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
So it's been what, 1% for years.
Well, for 5 years they got like nothing. So yeah. So again, that will show itself. We could see some reduction in Social Security benefit, could again see that increase in the taxes, let people pay, you know, as much as they earn, or increase that full retirement age. That seems to have been a pretty easy target. So our guess, to Margie's point, is that will be a piece of it, as it should be. I mean, life expectancy when it came out was 67, and now we're at late 80s, 90s. So if it starts at 70 instead of 67, probably not a bad idea. Things to really think about. And again, we've probably beat the table enough on this, but really working with a financial professional to have a solid plan in place so that you can really understand, what are my needs? What do I need to live a comfortable lifestyle? You do not want to trade the stress of work for the stress of money in retirement. And Marge and I run these plans and talk about finances all day, every day. It's what we do. It's what, you know, it's our passion, and we want to help people. But having that plan is so important, even though we know, you know, life is going to throw us curveballs. And sometimes somebody might say, I don't care what the dollars and cents look like, the stress is going to kill me. Then we have to figure it out. But Social Security, just like pension, is such a big decision and a big component that it's not something you want to take lightly or just on a whim because you can. So again, that really comes into evaluating the retirement income needs. Definitely head online and create your Social Security online account. To Margie's point, check your birthday, check your earnings histories, just do some estimates. It's so important. Do it now while you have a little bit of time, and you're not trying to file for Social Security and you find an error then, because it can be a nightmare to figure out. Determining filing timeline, and a lot of times if we have early retirees, and we say early before full retirement age, this is a moving target. It's not just because we say don't take it at 62 doesn't mean that we're saying you have to wait till 67. It's just getting into the groove of retirement and cash flow and figuring out what your true needs are before you lock yourself into a reduced amount. And then applying for benefits. You know, this is all things that we help you to walk through. It's kind of like those ads that, you know, don't try this at home alone. It's a big decision. It's an important decision. and you want to make the right decision for you and your family. And it really is a family decision.
Yeah, and I'd say that number two, if you just go back to that, evaluating the retirement income needs is what we help to quantify through software that we use, along with decades of experience of providing income, recreating the paycheck that you get each and every other week, and determining how we send out distributions. There are so many considerations. We're spending today, this afternoon, just a little bit of time here on the Social Security, but the tax law change that took place at the end of 2019, the Secure Act, well, we quickly ran into COVID year. And so many of the bullet points, if you will, on the Secure Act kind of went by the wayside. So we're bringing back to the attention of those we're working with or through presentations and education that those big changes that will affect everyone on this call today of pushing out required minimum distribution age to 72 from 70 and a half sounds great. They push it out an extra year and a half. However, they also greatly changed how non-spouse beneficiaries are treated in terms of what their requirements are if they inherit IRA and Roth IRA and 401k. And that has become really, from Secure Act forward, a very, very big planning consideration. So we couple all of these together as we sit down together face to face, or we Zoom with, as the case may be, and help you through your personal situation. Liz has popped up our contact information. That's our website, blueheronfinancialgroup.net, phone number. To reach out to us, it's best to send an email to Debbie saying that you'd like to either ask a question or set up some time to talk about your own personal retirement plans. We have now 21 years that we've been working with Northrop Grumman employees. So we've come to know your benefits package pretty well. And it too is ever changing. You saw the transformation that happened when everything went under the Fidelity umbrella, including healthcare as the most recent. So let us know how we can help you. We will follow this up with an email that will have just an overview of today's presentation. But again, if you have questions about your own situation, please don't hesitate to ask. We're here to help.
Thank you all so much for your time. And thanks again to the credit union for the partnership. We're 21 years strong. Thank you again, everybody, for your time.
Have a great afternoon.